Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a truly special online event today. It's called the Gateway to Quantum Ayurveda. Discover ancient secrets for healing the roots of disease and living consciously. My name is Steve Dinan. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I have long revered Ayurveda as one of the master systems for healing on the planet. And we've been blessed at the Shift Network to get to go deeper into this system with one of the world's most preeminent teachers. His name is Dr. John Douillard. He's the creator of Life Spa and global leader in natural health, Ayurveda, and sports medicine. He's been at the forefront of bridging this ancient system to the West for decades now. And today we're going to have a chance to go deep into what we're calling quantum Ayurveda, which is really taking the next step with Ayurveda as a system. And John is going to be doing a full 18-week training for folks who want to go deeper for both professional and personal reasons. We'll share more about that in the latter half of the hour. So, John, thank you so much for joining us here again today.
Good to be here, Stephen. Thank you.
Well, let's talk a little bit upfront about your journey into what we're calling quantum Ayurveda. So I'm basing this interface between the ancient knowledge and modern science.
You know, the beautiful thing about Ayurveda is they actually described the cause of disease thousands of years ago. And they said that the cause of disease was something called pragya, which translates means the mistake of the intellect, where I think we all have some understanding that there's an underlying field of intelligence, a quantum field. And when that field becomes our physiology, and our physiology forgets that it's actually part of this underlying field of which many physicists believe is consciousness. So when consciousness becomes matter, and then the matter or the physiology forgets that it's sourced in consciousness, that's the cause of disease. And quantum Ayurveda is really simple. It's restoring the memory of pure consciousness into the physiology where it's lost its way. It's begin to function independent of the field, rogue, without the connection to the whole, to the source. And bridging that gap is really an incredible, beautiful science that is really, really hardly ever talked about, even in Ayurvedic circles. But there's volumes of research in Western science that actually support this theory. And that's what we're going to dive into.
So in many ways, it sounds like a forgetting is the upstream cause of all disease, ultimately.
Sure. Forgetting, how to function as part of the whole. And in Ayurveda, they call it either coherence or incoherence. And the field from which everything comes from, that creative field of intelligence, is clearly coherent. But unfortunately, when it becomes manifest into the physiology, because of stress and certain things, it becomes very much incoherent. So here's the really cool part. If you were trying to restore the memory of pure consciousness into the physiology, then you would probably want to find something that exists as both a frequency, kind of a wave-like pattern, and also a manifest particle as well. So what subatomic particle functions as both a field or a wave and a particle at the same time? Because that would exist at the junction point between consciousness and matter and field and physiology. And the crazy thing is that we produce out of our DNA thousands per minute something called ultra weak photon emissions, which photons are light, and they function, as we all know, as both frequencies of light and particles of light. And they literally exist at the junction point between consciousness and matter and field and physiology. So the research on these photon emissions show that they can be actually coherent or incoherent. And unfortunately, the vast majority of them in our body are incoherent, and they actually cause damage in our body. And our body has to figure out a way to deal with that DNA damage. And as we get older, we don't deal with that as well. But studies show that when you meditate or do yoga or breathing, that the incoherent photon emissions dial down, and you're left with the coherent photon emissions, which turn out to be able to carry information in our body. In fact, studies show they actually carry our thoughts. The idea that thinking goes from one neuron firing to another neuron is fast enough to deal with how some people can think so incredibly fast, it just doesn't hold up. Turns out that the thinking is way faster than neurons firing from one to another. Our thoughts are carried on these frequencies of light or frequencies of photon, according to the science. And some studies even show that those photons, when they're coherent, not only do they carry information, they actually carry our intention. So that means that at a certain state, if you could actually create a level of coherence and then initiate an intention. And in the course, we actually talk about frequencies you can initiate that support and have been studied and used for thousands of years for self-healing. And there's other frequencies you can use for distance healing. You know, prayer, if you look at the science behind prayer, which is a form of distance healing, it's overwhelming. And in some studies, it works better than any drug on the planet, but there are studies showing that it doesn't work so well. So the mechanism for that may, in fact, be that when you're involved in prayer for healing someone at a distance or yourself, are your photon emissions overwhelmed with incoherent DNA damage photon emissions, or are they coherent? And that's where Ayurveda comes in. If we can create that coherence, and this is what this whole course is about, is initiate that coherence at the most subtle level, initiate an intention at that subtle level, and then elicit the beginning of a healing response. That's what's going to spark the healing response. Now, it doesn't mean that it's all done at that quantum level, because that's extremely subtle. Now, in Ayurveda, we know that the more subtle something is, the more powerful it is. But that's the first step of the process. And then once you address the coherence at the level of the field, then we address it at the level of the mind. Then we address it at the level of the breath. And then we address it at the level of the body, weaving that coherent field into every aspect. But even at the end of this course, we're going to be talking about the body physiologically, how herbs and diet and lifestyle all play a role on a quantum level to actually bring the healing from the most subtle to the most gross and really finish the job. And that's why I was so excited about doing this course, because we have this opportunity with so much time to actually take someone from that incredible power of the quantum mechanics to access, to dip the cloth in the dye of that quantum field of creative intelligence, and then carry that through healing, carry that with intention, carry that with the joy and the happiness and contentment of your life. And also, you know, create kind of the precursor to a really powerful physical healing deeply from the inside out.
Well, that was quite a metaphysical download there. A lot to unpack in that, and so it sounds like this moving upstream to like creating that coherent field of consciousness is part of what then downstream flows into all the different triggers and momentum, really, of health. Is that true? So, is it true that like as we get incarnate and gradually get older, that there's a tendency towards more and more lack of coherence, and that we sort of like have to unravel that or get back to the sort of the original template?
That's the key. I call them unnecessary aging factors, that we age in an unnecessary way because, the coherence isn't something that we have to create. That's who we are. Mm-hmm. It's the incoherence that accumulates with age, gravity, years, stress, and things like that. But so many of them can be mitigated with diet, herbs, lifestyle, and some of these really powerful quantum tools. Like some of the tools we're going to use, like not only do the photons exist at the junction point between conscious and matter and field and physiology, but Ayurveda called them gap therapies. Gap therapies means, how do we widen that gap? How do we create more awareness, self-awareness at the junction point between our experience and the reaction to it? In our physiology, we have chemical signals and the body responds to them. There's a gap between that. Neurologically, we have stimuli, and then we have a motor reaction. There's these gaps in the physiology that are well documented in modern science. But the ancients also saw it as the sunrise, and the gap between the day and the night and the sunset, the gap between the seasons, the equinox and the solstices, the gap between our thoughts, the gap between the breath. I mean, the gap between the breath, which is what Ayurveda called kumbhak, which is pranayam. Pranayam originally meant prana being breath. Yam means to pause, hold, or extend the breath. And the research on that is just unbelievable. It's literally called in Western medicine intermittent hypoxia. And when they found that when you would hold your breath for a comfortable time, and over time you get better at it, it's been shown to increase stem cells, been shown to increase nitric oxide, the Nobel Prize winning molecule that's the panacea, been shown to increase endothelial growth factors to protect the lining of your arteries, been shown to increase transcription factors that protect your genetic code from expressing those genetic traits as we age due to DNA damage. It's shown to actually create something called neuroplasticity, which means that, as we get older, we watch ourselves doing the same dumb thing again and again. I think we go home for the holidays, we start acting like a 4 or a 5-year-old again, wondering why is my family so triggering me so much? These are just patterns of behavior. And when you actually open the door to neuroplasticity, you can literally have access to changing those old patterns of behavior. All of this is part of building coherence and getting rid of the incoherence so that the coherence can go in there and restore the memory of consciousness at the most fundamental level. So we have to deal with that, the field. Then we got to go into the emotions of the mind. Then we got to deal with the breath, which is huge. And then we get to the body, all weaving that quantum kind of infusion of consciousness and coherence into every cell of the body.
That's really quite an overview. And so it sounds like the practices of yoga that we usually associate, yoga, breathwork, meditation, these are all actually very integral to a comprehensive approach to Ayurvedic health.
Well, the yoga was so critical because the yoga created elasticity, and particularly in the physiology, but most particularly in the rib cage. Our rib cage has one job: squeeze the air out. And the rib cage over time gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And soon we start shallow breathing. I was in a restaurant a while back, and I was helping a couple of elderly folks get out of the restaurant through a couple of double doors, and they were laboring. Their mouths were open, they were huffing and puffing, and it wasn't easy for them to get out. And I looked and I said, gosh, if someone would have just told them how to breathe for 5 minutes a day, it would reverse the heartburn. According to good science, there's at least 15 studies that show if you can strengthen your diaphragm, you can reverse the heartburn, the GERD, the reflux, the indigestion. But you go to the doctor, they don't tell you that, but it's in their medical journals. It would actually reverse the blood pressure. Studies show by strengthening the diaphragm in a particular way, you can reverse your heartburn in just 3 minutes, as good as a Western medication. Studies show that when you strengthen the diaphragm, you increase what's called cerebrospinal fluid, the pump of the brain-washing fluid to dump 3 pounds of trash, toxins, plaque out of your brain while you sleep. And when you're not breathing properly, those toxins can build up in the brain's lymphatic and glymphatic systems. And that's linked to not only age-related cognitive decline, which you get when you get older, sort of like expected, but it's also linked to, according to Western medicine, congestion of the brain lymphatic system, linked to poor breathing, anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, inflammation, infection, and even autoimmune concerns are linked to congestion of the brain's lymphatic congestion, because the master computer doesn't know how many fire trucks to send to the immune event somewhere in your body. It sends too many or too little. And even studies, when long-haul COVID first came out, the original study said long-haul COVID was linked to congestion of the brain's lymph and lymphatic system. Nobody heard about that because there's no therapies in Western medicine for the brain, lymph, and lymphatic system. But Ayurveda talked about them thousands of years ago. Not only is it critical to reboot your diaphragmatic function, and studies with elite athletes, 91% of athletes that were tested did not have a diaphragm relaxing and contracting fully, which is such a critical piece of the puzzle. And then there's brain lymphatic cleansing techniques that Ayurveda used for thousands of years that work so incredibly well that we're going to teach in this course. And once you start getting that brain, lymph, and lymphatic system out moving for us, then all of a sudden, that those age-related cognitive decline, the immune response, that lymph system's trying to take out all the trash, carry your immune system, and deliver fatty acids to every cell of your body. Fatty acids, when your lymph system's congested, are directly linked to your inability to make hormones. So everybody goes on HRT because you're not making the hormones as they age. The delivery system for those fatty acids, the precursors to the hormones, is your lymphatic system, which stems from a healthy digestive system. All the extra weight around your belly is clearly, according to Western research, lymphatic congestion due to weak digestion. So we're going to talk all about how to reboot digestion, troubleshoot digestion, reboot the lymphatic system, detoxify the brain lymph, and really get the body to help take the trash out. And when the trash is out, then that quantum coherence can begin to kind of take over, restore the memory of consciousness at the most subtle level, while we're also pulling those strings on the physiological level as well.
It's truly fascinating how all these things work together. Can you share a little more? Because I know there's a lot of focus in the West on detoxification right now, but how the way that Ayurveda is working with detoxification is a bit more integrative and comprehensive.
Well, yeah, detox is a really important piece of the puzzle. But in Western medicine, we just clean the body out. And I've done so many cleanses when I was younger, and I always felt like I became addicted to having to cleanse to feel good. And in Ayurveda, when I went to India in 1986, it was like, oh, they understood how important it was that the environment and the delicate balance of your intestinal environment for a healthy microbiome and the delicate balance of your digestive strength, how critically important that was. So instead of saying, oh, let's just clean you out, let's ask why you got toxic in the first place. So it's a reboot of the coordinated effort of stomach acid, bile flow, pancreatic enzymes, a reboot and detox of liver function and lymphatic function, a healing of the intestinal environment so you can support the healthy microbiome. And when you put all that together and then you do what Ayurveda does, is something called a lipophilic mediated detox, where you take a little bit of really good healthy fat while you're having a low fat diet. And those fats, this is a Western studied technique, they go in there and they attach to the bad fats in your body. And one study showed that those detox pathways processes actually were able to reduce PCBs out of the body at 46%. And pesticides out of the body at 56% compared to the folks who didn't do an Ayurvedic cleanse. So we have good science about why it does, but more importantly, you're rebooting the reason why we get unhealthy or become toxic in the first place. And that, I think, that's the piece of the puzzle that just sort of doesn't exist in kind of the conventional cleanses we see that just kind of clean you out, but then you're kind of toxic and craving chocolate chip cookies, and binging on them, the day after, which I've done many times, by the way.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I want to ask a little bit more about the breathing as well, since I know you've taught whole courses on the breathing and that breathing is so central to the shifting to this coherent frequencies, to like really getting that kind of quantum coherence at a cellular level. So maybe share a little bit more about why that is, why it's sort of so undervalued as a technique for health in the West.
I don't know. I don't know why it's undervalued, because what I kind of do for a living is I dig into the Western research and I write about how that connects to ancient medical wisdom. And there's just no shortage of studies that show the power of breathing. But what I've also found is that pranayama techniques only work when you actually have an elastic rib cage, which is why yoga was put in place first. Yoga, breathing, meditation. It was a sequence of events. But if the rib cage is rigid, the pranayama is not going to really work. So what I do with my patients is I actually help them create kind of an elastic rib cage where the rib cage and the diaphragm are independent of each other. And most of the time, the rib cage is tight, the diaphragm is weak. 91% of athletes don't have one functioning optimally. And once we get that working, then the sky's the limit in terms of physiological health, but also carrying that self-awareness, infusing that coherence and consciousness into the physiology. That has to be the rib cage elasticity, and a functioning diaphragm is the critical piece of the prana puzzle. And prana is that information carrying molecule that actually supports the delivery of the intelligence to restore the consciousness into the physiology. But if this rib cage is tight and you're breathing like a rabbit in the upper chest, where every breath is a fight or flight emergency response, then we're going to have a hard time telling the body the war's over, and it's safe enough to let the very delicate petals of that flower open. It doesn't. It stays incoherent and stressed.
So, I mean, it sounds really compelling how important it is to bring that elasticity and coherence to the breath. So, how much practice a day does it really require to make the shifts you're talking about?
Well, I'd like to teach a 5 minute a day technique for folks where they could at least take that first initial step to free the rib cage from the diaphragm. So the diaphragm, I didn't say, which I should have, is that the diaphragm, and this is in the Western medical journals, but nobody talks about it. The number one pump for your body's entire lymphatic system is your diaphragm. And with 91% of athletes not having one functioning well, and most of us, every time we get stressed out, we change how we breathe a little bit. And in short order, that breathing becomes permanent. And then another stress comes along, and that stress version becomes permanent. And over time, the rib cage gets tighter and tighter. Next thing you know, we're struggling to get out of a restaurant with our mouths open. We have cognitive decline, high blood pressure, heartburn, indigestion, all these age-related unnecessary aging factors, which can completely be reversed by having a functional diaphragm and an elastic rib cage. And that is step one for higher states of consciousness, which are maintained by the movement of your prana.
That makes the total amount of sense. Total sense. So, do you want to lead that 5 minute meditation now, so we can get a little taste of the kind of work you do?
Yeah, I love that. Well, the first one is actually called a pranayama technique. It's called Durga Pranayama. And I should say that in the journals, to heal the things that I mentioned, heartburn, blood pressure, all that, they call it maximum inspiratory breathing techniques. So that means maximum inhales. So we have to fully contract your diaphragm during an inhale. But if you do it really fast, that's exactly what you would do if you saw a bear in the woods. You would take an upper chest gasping breath. So it has to be done slowly. So this is the key word here. We're going to breathe through our nose, long, slow, deep, but we're going to do it in a maximal way to get the well-researched benefits we're talking about, okay? So we're going to breathe through our nose, and we're going to do what we call a three-part breath. This is called Durga Pranayama. You're going to fill your belly, then you're going to fill your chest, then you're going to fill your upper chest as part of the inhale, okay? And then to take it to a maximal level, after you fill your upper chest, you're going to fill the rib cage a little bit more by taking little sips of air through your nose, like this. So let's try that. Okay, let's breathe out, be comfortable. Now breathe in, fill your belly like a Buddha. Continue the inhale, fill your chest. Continue the inhale, fill the upper chest. And then with little sips of air, take it to maximal and then let it out. And when you let it out, try to narrow the rib cage and fully contract the abdomen. Again, belly goes out, inhale, chest, upper chest. Now, little sips of air. And when you go all the way, you should feel a little pull under your rib cage. Your diaphragm's going down, your rib cage is sort of going up as you breathe in, and you're feeling that separation and breathe out. Did you feel that, Stephen? Did you feel that pull into the rib cage when you went all the way to
yeah, a bit. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so that's the beginning, and that's the first breath that I want you to do, and that's the first. Step one is that. Step two is now to put it to work, put that breath to work. So we're going to do the same breath. We're going to take our arms over our head, and you can do this in front of your computer. And then you're going to do the same breath, and now you're going to fill your belly like a Buddha, all the way out, all the way in with your belly, or all the way out with your belly. Then your chest, then your upper chest. Now, as you reach for the sky, as high as you can reach, sip as much air as you can. Sip, 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 reach, reach, reach. And then arms come down, narrow the rib cage, contract the abdomen all the way out, all the way out, all the way out. Full exhalation is key. Then as you go in, belly goes out, arms go up. Then you go into your chest, upper chest, sip, sip, sip. Nice and slow, but nice and deep, and reach, reach, reach. Arms come down, rib cage goes narrow, contract the abdomen all the way. And that you do 10 times, okay? Then That's going to help. As you're going up and reaching, the rib cage is going up, your diaphragm's going down. We're creating massive separation between the attachments of your diaphragm to your rib cage. Now, the second step is to do it laterally. You're going to go into a lateral side bend, and you're going to feel your belly, your chest, your upper chest. Sip, sip, sip. And if you do that, you'll feel a nice pull here. As you go sip, 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 you'll feel a really nice stretch in this area that you wouldn't get if you didn't breathe in maximally. And then as you breathe out, this time you're going to go all the way to the side, squeeze every last bit of air out, 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 out. And then you go back over, belly, inhale, chest, inhale, upper chest, sip, sip, sip. And then again, all the way out to the side and squeeze all the air out. One of the reasons why it's so important to fully exhale is that when you exhale, what's happening is, and I'll stand up and I'll show you, is that when you exhale, the diaphragm relaxes and it parachutes up underneath your rib cage. But for most of us, the rib cage has gotten so tight that there's no room for the rib cage to fully relax and fully, parachute up under the rib cage, moving the dead air space out of your lungs. So there's about 500 milliliters of air that stay in your lungs that just never moves. It's just toxic dead air space. It's literally called dead air space. But when you have full exhalation, you move that out and you have access to breathing deeper into the lower lobes of your lungs where the parasympathetic rest and rejuvenative receptors are. They'll tell your body life's, not an emergency, and activate that kind of that vagal response that everybody wants to have, that neurological calm. So that's why that full narrowing of the rib cage, contract the abdomen so the diaphragm fully parachutes up underneath is critical. And then when you breathe in, get that rib up, 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 rib cage is going down, diaphragm's going down, rib cage going up, and create that level of elasticity. And then the last piece of this, which we'll talk more about in the course, is doing some very simple yoga postures, like even a child's pose, or a bridge, or a sphinx, or a very gentle twist, and then breathe belly, chest, upper chest, sip, 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 and then twist the other way, belly, chest, upper chest, sip, sip, sip. These are the tools. I call them calisthenics for the diaphragm, or flossing the diaphragm. Getting that diaphragm and the rib cage to really work. Once that's established after a month of doing these exercises, we start building really deep, refined pranayama techniques to really make this this diaphragm function. Because on the diaphragm are what are called interoreceptors. We have proprioceptors on the outside where we can feel when we're being touched. They can also be trained to feel the field, the presence of consciousness. The diaphragm has interoreceptors to feel and interpret signals of the physiology, but also tools, according to the science, for self-awareness. So when you begin to use your diaphragm in a subtle way, after it's functioning the way it's designed, you can use the diaphragm and breathing techniques as tools for self-awareness. Change the brainwaves to be more what are called alpha and coherent, and even gamma brainwave production created by certain breathing techniques that are literally linked to altruism and higher states of consciousness. But we got to start this thing properly so this rib cage is really elastic for us. And along the way, so many beautiful physiological things happen for folks when they start learning how to breathe again, and just push away this aging gravity effect and stress of life effect of walking around, breathing shallow, snoring while you go to sleep at night, and not having the respiratory efficiency, which is your lymphatic pump. And when that lymph, becomes compromised, well, in Ayurveda, the lymphatic system, or the study of it, is literally the study of longevity. They said that if your lymph system's congested, that's directly linked to accelerated aging, because it's carrying your immune system, taking out the trash, and delivering those really important fatty acids for delivering, hormone function and energy to every cell of your body. Without that, we pay a price.
Brilliant. Well, it's really clear. Also, I can notice, I'm sure other people that it's like some of the breathing exercises is like, I haven't really awakened some of these areas for a while. So it's really clear that our normal habits are not, doing the sort of diaphragm flossing. It's good. It's a very good practice for all of us. I want to ask about also the component of Ayurveda that's a lot about the energetics, the doshas, and the sort of understanding your system energetically too, and how that fits into this understanding of a kind of quantum approach to health.
It's really beautiful. There are governing principles in nature, and we can call them winter, summer, and spring. And of course, we know that there's 4 seasons, but how Ayurveda looks at it is how we interact with nature via the harvest. There's a spring harvest, a summer harvest, and a fall harvest for winter eating, which is sort of a dormant season in general. So these governing principles of kind of winter, summer, spring have to do with kind of principles that exist inside of us. People have more winter qualities. We call them vata, or air-based. They're going to be cold all the time, grabbing the covers, putting jackets on, cold hands, cold feet. They're going to be that folk. The summer body types are going to be throwing the covers off, never wearing a hat or a jacket because they're naturally hot inside. The spring body types, they're going to tend to be like in the spring. It's going to, if you go for a hike in the spring, you're going to probably end up come back with muddy feet. And that's because the earth holds on to more water in the spring. We hold on to more water in the spring. And if you are born with that type of constitution, you're going to be more vulnerable to holding on to more water and more congestion, maybe gain weight. The winter bites types might be more vulnerable to worry or anxiety or not sleeping as well. The fiery, pitta, fiery, competitive driven types are more vulnerable to inflammation, has the word flame in it, or heartburn or skin rashes, things like that. So everybody gets a body type. But what you really want to understand is, how does my type, so it's sort of my ethnicity even, interact with the harvest, right? So if I'm a cold winter body type, and I'm eating frozen smoothies with frozen blueberries in January in Vermont in the 1800s, first of all, you can never make that happen. But nature would provide, like the squirrels in the winter, nuts and seeds, and generally you'd hunt more and get more animal protein and fat. And those are insulating foods where nature provides the antidote to every season with its harvest. Summer heat is antidoted by cool fruits and vegetables. Spring allergies and congestion are answered by a austere harvest, a real low or no carbohydrate time of the year, and austere harvest of roots and spring greens, which are not in any way mucus forming in a mucus making time of your life or season. So nature's always providing the antidote to the extreme of each season. And that's the beautiful thing about understanding your nature and how you interact with Mother Nature and where your weak link might be. Like, I have more pitta, summer in my body type, so I have to really make sure I take the grocery list for summer and I eat more of the foods on that grocery list. It's not hard to do. It's just understanding what foods actually really are medicines for my particular type in that particular season.
Makes total sense, and it's fascinating. It's so the Western medicine just doesn't even acknowledge these kinds of core differentiators in our physiology and energetic systems. So super helpful to be able to have those distinctions and eat in alignment and act in alignment with our energetic types. So with our doshas. So really fascinating information already. And I want to just ask you to share a few stories around what you've seen in terms of the ability of a kind of quantum Ayurvedic approach to really transform different difficult health situations, since I know you've worked with a lot of people.
Oh my God. Well, there's so many to think of, let's start with what we call bubble wrapping your diet. So many people can't eat certain foods. We stop eating wheat, dairy. We can't eat beans, lectins, grains, nightshades, oxalates, goitrogens. We're being told, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat. And those foods have been eaten for millions of years, at least as Homo sapiens, hundreds of thousands of years. And all of a sudden, now they're bad. Number one, those foods are seasonal. They weren't every single day. And number two, because of the stress in our life and pesticides and certain chemicals, environmental pollutants, our digestive strength has weakened. So when we eat certain foods, we don't tolerate them well, particularly if they're harder to digest. So we just blame the food. Oh, it's the wheat, it's the dairy, it's the nuts. So we blame the food as opposed to rebooting the underlying digestive strength. And here's the problem with that. Studies show that if you don't break down your nuts and your seeds, your fats and your proteins, it could be gluten or dairy or whatever, they will go incompletely digested into the intestinal tract, and they will be too big to get into your blood and nourish you, and they'll get uptaken into the collecting ducts of your lymph. And that's the first place that gets congested. And the lymphatic system, like I said, is trying to take out the trash, carry the immune system, and deliver energy. And when that starts to break down, you start getting extra weight around your belly, you start getting tired, lethargic, rashes, can't sleep at night, headaches. It affects your brain lymph, which is your mood and your cognitive function. And that's where it all starts. And I can't tell you how many patients who came to me who couldn't eat wheat. They weren't celiac, but they were gluten-free, but didn't have to be. And now all of a sudden they can actually eat wheat and eat and open the door to a variety of different foods. And instead of bubble wrapping the diet where we go down the road of eating less and less and less and less because I can't tolerate anything, we start opening the door to be resilient like you were when you were 18 years old and you could digest kind of sort of anything. And that's the beauty of Ayurveda. We don't just treat the symptom, we go into try to really understand the underlying cause of that. And then from, the mental health perspective, there's so many studies, and so I have so many cases of patients who strengthen their diaphragm and their insomnia, their age-related cognitive decline, their mood, anxiety, worry, all change because you're breathing 26,000 times per day. And how you breathe tells you whether your life is an emergency or it's a stress. And that's the beauty of these simple things when you tie them all together. And when you really begin to understand the physiology as this sort of dense body, but it's also supported by this underlying quantum field of intelligence. And when you bring all of those pieces of the puzzle together, which is why I'm so in love with my practice and what I do, because it's just so amazing to watch people heal at the deepest possible level. So they're not dependent on a pill or a powder or for the rest of their life. It's really building self-sufficiency.
So empowering, this perspective. Well, John, you're just a wealth of fascinating information and really carrying this ancient wisdom into a very modern context, basing it also around all the most recent studies. So let's talk about your upcoming training, which is a really unique opportunity to dive deep into these foundations, to work at the really core level, root level, upstream causes of disease, both for our personal health as well as those of clients we may work with as well. So John has agreed to teach this brand new training for Shift. It's called Quantum Ayurveda, Ancient Preventative Practices for Healing the Root of Disease and Cultivating Radiant Health as You Age. You can find it at the URL quantumayurvedatraining.com, quantumayurvedatraining.com. As we said earlier, it's an 18-week training. So this is going to be a deep dive, really going to distill a lot of wisdom in one place. So John, I'd love for you to share about some of your intentions of what people will come away from the 18-week training with and how that can apply in their lives or their work with clients as well. And then let's go through at least a brief tour of the modules, what you'll be teaching.
So like I said, this course is designed into a couple of categories. We're going to have a handful of modules related to the field, how to enliven the field, how to dip the cloth in the dye of your own consciousness and how to carry that into your physiology. And then there's going to be modules on the mind, the Ayurvedic psychology piece, where we're really going to get into how to free yourself from old underlying patterns of behavior. We feel safe enough to let, like I said, the delicate petals of your flower open. Let something real, something vulnerable, something delicate, but yet even more powerful out. And then there's modules on the next part is the breath, how critical the breath is. So we're going to really make sure we do a deep dive. Now, every module along the way, there's going to be a meditation and a breathing practice to build and deliver a heightened state of self-awareness. I have to teach you how to learn how to feel and not think. And that's how we begin to interact with the underlying field of intelligence. And that's kind of how this course is laid out, is to free the body from incoherence so the coherence can deliver an experience that you can feel and participate in, having a relationship with the field. And that's where the breath comes in a really big way. And then finally, we have numerous modules on healing the body, the physiology, and how we can do that in ways that are also very physical, herbs, diet, lifestyle, but also weaving in the quantum mechanics to support the healing of the digestion or the hormonal systems or the weight gain from a quantum perspective.
What a great training this is. So let's go through, and we've segmented into 4 different segments. So the part 1 is called the field, and module 1 in the field is called harness your photon field to restore deep inner coherence.
Yeah, so this is when we actually, create that understanding of how to access that field, and then elicit, creating a meditation specifically for self-healing and a specific meditation for distance healing. So there are certain vibrations or frequencies or mantras that have been used for thousands of years called sutras that are specific for healing and creating coherence within the body, but also creating an intention and carrying it at great distances for distance healing. So that's going to be kind of I'm so fascinated by this first module, because we're going to talk about the junction between consciousness and matter and how the biophotons work, how to create coherence there, and then create these meditations to deliver self-healing or distance healing. It's going to be really cool.
Module 2, enter Ritam to manifest with more ease and greater purpose.
So Ritam means fulfillment of your desires. It's sort of that manifestation of, the pot of gold. But from the Vedic perspective, it wasn't about manifestation. It's about creating an experience of coherence and then creating an intention from that field. So it's like learning how to think and have intention, not really thinking, but having an intention, having an feeling that's deeper and below thought, and having that intention be carried into the physiology and carried into a manifested experience. So in other words, when you begin to access the creative, intelligent field and you begin to function from that field, then it's natural, as long as the intention is life-supporting and evolutionary, it's going to manifest itself. It's not about winning a car or winning a race or winning a lottery. It's really about having alignment and coherence where you feel content and joyful and feel free to let something so beautiful and delicate out that there's a level of contentment, not happy because something happened that was good, but it's really a level of deep joy and happiness for no reason.
Beautiful. Module 3 then goes into rest in silence to heal stress and restore your natural rhythm.
This is where we really talk about the fact that quantum field, when it becomes incoherent, can be described as stress. And we know that the epidemic of our time, call it metabolic syndrome, is literally caused by stress. When you look at high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, extra weight around your belly, metabolic syndrome, when you look at the research, every one of those are linked to stress. And when you actually meditate, it's been shown to reverse every one of those. In other words, if you're being chased by a bear, your body's going to, no question, and our culture, we're doing that 24/7 almost in our culture. The body's going to put more cholesterol in the blood to make more stress-fighting hormone to get you up a tree faster. It's going to raise your blood pressure to get you up that tree. It's going to raise your blood sugar to give you more energy to get up that tree. Any reserve fuel it can find, it's going to stick it under the mattress and store extra fuel or extra weight as reserve fuel. So this whole module is about really showing that even at the level of the field, it's directly linked to the physiology. And we're going to give you special breathing techniques to actually reverse the metabolic syndrome, some of these physiological traits very, very early on in the course. Later on, we're going to actually deal with it more directly, but we're going to begin the process of actually reversing that stress response that manifests itself as many things, but for sure, metabolic syndrome.
Module 4, work with the gap to restore cellular memory and reconnect with the field.
Like I said, at the junction between field and physiology, there's the sunrise, sunset, seasonal changes, the gap between the breath, the gap between the thoughts, the gap between our experience and our reaction to it. So we're going to explore all these tools that have been used for thousands of years, along with the modern science, and how you can use meditation techniques and rituals to actually kind of expand that gap and again begin to function from the level of that field. And like we said, it's like putting a lamp in a doorway. If I were to take a light and put it in the doorway, it would shine into both rooms. To restore the memory of pure consciousness and your physiology, I need to put a light, which is photons, coherent ones, at the junction point between consciousness and matter and field and physiology. That's where it lives. But if I put that light there, at the gap, it shines into both directions. So in Ayurveda, there were so many of these gap therapies to again continually support the coherence, driving into the physiology and removing the incoherence and the source of disease. So all these gap therapies are going to be really fun and exciting to talk about.
We then go into part 2, which is all in the mind. Module 5 is heal emotional patterns through the wisdom of Ayurvedic psychology.
Studies show that 95% of the things we think and say and do as adults come from impressions from the first 4 or 5 years of life. Ayurveda suggested that we are pretty much unconscious and suggested that we need to become conscious, which is one of the reasons why Ayurveda was created. And that conscious means coherence. So in this module, I talked about going home for the holidays and acting like a 5-year-old again. This is about helping us using Ayurvedic psychology techniques to free you from old, unwanted mental and emotional patterns of behavior. Not going through door number 1, the same door we've been driving down for years, doing the same dumb thing again and again and again. It's actually having a level of self-awareness to see that there is a road less traveled, a door number 2 that's designed to let something delicate, powerful, and vulnerable out. And that's such a beautiful experience. And there's really cool Ayurvedic psychology techniques we're going to use for that.
Module 6, identify your emotional body type to break patterns and align with your true self.
So in this, we're going to actually take a little quiz together. It's your emotional body type quiz, asking you questions about how you handle money, your sex drive, do you drink alcohol, your diet, do you hold on to grudges, are you jealous, all these emotional traits. And then we're going to ask you, how are you handling them from a Ayurvedic perspective? Are you handling it in a sattvic way, which means I'm loving and giving and kind for no reason because it's my nature? Am I rajasic in my response to, say, money, which means I only satisfy when I'm getting some of it? My satisfaction comes from the outside world. Or have I become so burned out that I'm now tamasic in my behavior and I'm too numb, too old to change? I've withdrawn and retreated and I can't change. I become sort of dull and withdrawn. And when we find out in this questionnaire, anywhere that you're tamasic or rajasic, we're going to use those emotions as our roadmap to go back and become more sattvic in those areas. Because every one of us have a way of being, our own personal traits that may have served us when we were a kid, but are they serving you as an adult? And we're going to identify what those traits are, and we're going to use tools to free yourself and become more sattvic, more free, so you're not holding on for dear life in a survival mechanism in that specific area, and unravel a level of freedom and joy and contentment through, the part or the weakness or that trait that we hold on to for dear life. This is a really special module.
Module 7, go beyond thought to access your quantum self.
So this is about self-inquiry. Self-inquiry means the self, the field, the coherence. And how do you inquire with that? Well, there's 2 ways. There's passive self-inquiry and active self-inquiry. I'm going to provide a really detailed active self-inquiry guide that is a step-by-step kind of journaling guide that people will take throughout the course to kind of begin to become more self-aware, kind of slowly unraveling like an onion access to the self and to the field. And then we're going to give you the tools for what are called passive self-inquiry, where we use meditation and breathing techniques to begin to drop you into the field. And then we will introduce an inquiry, a question to the self. And the response will not be from thoughts. Thinking is not going to give you an answer from the self. The self doesn't use thoughts. It's learning how to interpret feelings. And we're going to guide you through that really beautiful passive self-inquiry process.
Module 8, clear the brain's lymphatic and lymphatic detoxification systems to become more conscious and emotionally free.
Like we talked about before, there's the brain lymph and lymphatic systems that are actually moved by the diaphragm. And there's techniques in Ayurveda that are specific to free the brain and lymph and lymphatic system. So we're going to take a deep dive. I'm going to give you tools and practices to actually not only breathe, to pump that, but actually techniques to actually release some of the toxins that build up in the brain lymph system, which are a very, very real, well-studied thing. But in Western medicine, there's just no application in Western science as of yet.
Module 9, restore cognitive vitality and lift brain fog through science and ancient wisdom.
We have insufficiencies in our mental, emotional field. In other words, take, for example, the sense of smell. We use a fraction of our sense of smell. And I'm going to teach you guys how to reactivate the sense of smell in relationship to the emotional cortex where our memories are stored. And studies show with people with cognitive decline, age-related cognitive decline, it was shown by rebooting just the sense of smell, it increased their cognitive function by 226%. There's also nutritional insufficiencies that affect how we think. Some of those nutritional insufficiencies can actually shrink the volume of your brain. So we have to sort of do a little rinse of all the possible nutritional insufficiencies and sensory insufficiencies that we have so we can actually have a full palette of mental capacity to actually create the level of self-awareness that we need. We're going to literally refine the human instrument to be able to perceive subtle energy in ways that it's designed to do, but we can't do it if you don't have enough gas in the tank.
Then we get into part 3, the breath. Module 10 is strengthen the diaphragm to boost longevity, lymph flow, and emotional balance.
Again, a deeper dive into the diaphragm, taking what we just did of sort of the calisthenics of the diaphragm, but now taking that into different aspects of diaphragmatic function, and then getting into refined breathing techniques that actually support the higher level of consciousness and the driving of coherence into the physiology.
Then module 11, live from the eye of the storm to stay centered, powerful, and calm.
So the bigger the eye, the more powerful the winds. The eye is our inner state of coherence. That's the calm that we all hail from. So I'm going to teach you breathing techniques that we did studies, published studies in the International Journal of Neuroscience years ago that show when you actually breathe properly through the nose in vigorous exercise, you can create a brainwave state of coherence, a meditative state of alpha production in the brain, and a parasympathetic dominance during vigorous activity. So imagine, running as fast as you can, but your brain meditating. But taking that into you're driving your kids to soccer practice, you're driving through traffic or handling stress, but having that calm off the mat. That's the key to this module. It's not just saying, okay, I'm going to meditate and do it all on the mat, yoga, breathe, meditate. I need to have this experience and have a tool to take this experience with me off the mat.
Module 12, use advanced breathwork to enter higher states of healing and consciousness.
So this is where we're going to really take the breathing to a deeper level. These are advanced breathing techniques. Remember, every module, every week, we're going to teach you a breathing and a meditation technique to slowly, continually deepen the experience, refine the subtle perception, teach you how to feel instead of just think, and begin to have a relationship with the field and the consciousness and the coherence. And these are going to be breathing techniques that are studied to actually enhance self-awareness, create that gamma brainwave coherence state that actually been shown to create and deliver higher states of consciousness. So this is a really cool and powerful module.
Then we get into part 4, the body. Module 13 begins with eat with the seasons to restore balance, rhythm, and your natural vitality.
In the soil, there's a microbial surge every spring. And those bugs become the bugs that attach to the plants that we eat. And when you eat those in the spring, those foods inoculate your gut with the right bugs for the right season. The reason why those bugs are unique for each season, bugs in the winter boost immunity, bugs in the summer get rid of heat, bugs in the spring in your gut change from one season to the next. The spring bugs help get rid of congestion. And they all happen because of the photons of light from the sun that change throughout the year throughout the growing cycles. So when you're taking foods in season, you're actually getting different bugs which carry different frequencies of light to create a different effect on your physiology. This is the subtle effect of eating with the seasons. And in Ayurveda, we know that the more powerful something is, the more subtle it is. And think about the circadian rhythms that birds fly south, the whales migrate. We can't see them. You can't see the microbiome. It's the most powerful thing that we know of. And we can't see these subtle rhythms, but they're carried and created by the frequencies of light that change throughout the year. And they are delivered from the microbes, from the soil, on the foods we eat. And that's why this is such a critical piece of the puzzle, to learn how to eat easily and simply, but eating in season.
Module 14, align with your circadian rhythm to restore energy, immunity, and inner balance.
In the same way the light changes in the seasons, it changes throughout the day. We have different frequencies of light in the morning, infrared in the morning, ultraviolet in the afternoon. The different frequencies of light activate certain biological clocks. And if they're out of rhythm, then we have circadian disruption. So there's studies that show that there's different times of day that we're designed to eat, designed to sleep, designed to think, designed to exercise. And we're going to talk about how to live in harmony and in rhythm and in coherence with the natural cycles. It's all about building coherence on these most subtle levels. If you're eating in harmony with nature, if you're eating seasonally in harmony with nature, if you're living your lifestyle in harmony with nature, all of a sudden, this idea of being connected to these rhythms isn't such a foreign concept anymore. You've created an environment where you begin to really feel that you're connected to the rhythms of nature, just like the whales who migrate, or our Native American ancestors. They migrated and they lived in such connection and harmony and a resonance with the cycles. We can do that too, and it doesn't take that much effort.
Module 15, heal your gut and lymph to strengthen immunity, mood, and longevity.
Yeah, so this is really important. The most important half inch in your body is where the intestinal lining meets the gut-associated lymphatic tissue. That's where your 70% of your immune system lives, and it's called your gut immunity. And that relationship is critical. So in this module, we're going to teach you how to reset a healthy environment for your gut, a healthy microbiome, reset a microbiome, a healthy and robust one, and actually decongest your lymphatic system. So that fundamental, most important half inch is absolutely functioning optimally. It's where the rubber meets the road, is in that half inch right there.
Module 16, balance your metabolism with Ayurvedic alternatives to Ozempic.
Yeah, Ozempic and Mounjaro are all these kind of weight loss, drugs that have huge side effects. And in Ayurveda, they talked about how to get rid of extra weight. And they did it by dealing with the stress. And there's foods like nuts and seeds and grains and berries and turmeric and soluble fiber that have been shown to be GLP-1 agonists, like Ozempic or Mounjaro. They have the exact same properties, but these are foods that help mitigate the stress. There's no secret that stress is what causes these weight-related concerns. So we're going to talk about the alternatives. I'm going to give you a weight balancing protocol that I did a study on many years ago, published those studies in an Ayurvedic journal, of how to reset the balance of your weight naturally. So we're going to get into that in detail as well.
Module 17, reset your digestion, lymph, and liver with a seasonal Ayurvedic cleanse.
In Ayurveda, there's something called Ritu Sandhi, which means the change of the season. And they said that when the seasons change, that's the critical piece of the puzzle for protecting yourself from disease. If you don't transition from one season next properly, you're more vulnerable to the beginning of the disease process. At the end of the summer, there's a lot of heat, right? And that heat has to be dissipated. Otherwise, as you go into winter, that heat becomes dryness, dries out your respiratory tract. That affects respiratory immunity. You become more vulnerable to getting a cold or a sickness. So nature said, I got a plan for that. I'm going to give you a harvest of apples and watermelons and fruits that are going to make you have looser stools to help dissipate the heat and protect you from that excess heat becoming dryness in the winter. Just like when a baby gets a fever, they also get loose motion. Our body's way of getting rid of heat, which is critical at the end of the summer, is to create purgation. So nature gave us an abundance of apples, for example, to give us a little bit of a looser stool to dissipate that heat. So we're going to teach you how to do a cleanse or dramatically change your diet to make sure that you are in line with those seasonal changes.
And finally, Module 18, assess and repair the root causes of food intolerances to reboot your digestion.
Yeah, we have to stop thinking about bubble wrapping our diet. And the only way to feel good is to take the food out of the diet. I'm going to give you a troubleshooting guide to assess every aspect of your digestion: stomach acid, bile flow, pancreatic duodenal enzymes, intestinal linings, the lymph around your intestinal tract, liver function. And we're going to use herbs and diet and lifestyle to reboot them. So we're going to give you a really comprehensive plan to reboot your digestive strength and find out where it might be broken and how to fix it without having to take all the food out of the diet to actually feel comfortable in your skin.
Well, it's really clear in going through all that with you, John, just how comprehensive and sophisticated and deep and integrative this whole program is going to be. What a training this is. So again, the whole program is laid out in even more detail at quantumayurvedatraining.com. In addition to the 90-minute live sessions with John, you're going to get recordings of every session, both video and audio, which are great because there's a lot of information. It's good to be able to refer back. There's word-for-word transcripts. There's weekly exercises. There's a community group to support you and deepen your experience. There's also a number of extra bonuses that John has added to enhance the value. There is a video interview with Dr. John called Ayurvedic Quantum Healing, and another bonus, also a video titled Resolving Mental and Emotional Stress with Ayurveda. So there's also an exclusive one-time 20% off savings code at the LifeSpa online store that John has developed. Do you want to share more about the discount on the LifeSpa online store?
Yeah, I mean, I've been formulating Ayurvedic herbs for, almost 40 years now. And what we do at LifeSpa is we actually use herbs that have the whole plant and its naturally occurring microbiome. And that's where the intelligence comes in. You know, herbs that are extracted are sterile and they do the job for you, but they leave you dependent on that pillar of powder. But in Ayurveda, it was about capturing nature in its complete form and using them to restore function so the body can do the job for itself. And that's what you'll have access to in the store, and you get discounts for that.
Great extra bonus there. And then there's one special bonus, which is really quite a robust one that you get if you sign up right away. If you sign up by midnight tonight, you'll receive Dr. John's ebook, Colorado Cleanse. So applying some of those deeper, more holistic cleanse principles. Well, it's clear just how valuable this program is going to be. It's going to be incredibly valuable personally for individual health as well as for practices that people have in serving others. So we've given all the depth of the material and the level of sophistication, we've kept the investment very accessible. It's just 5 payments of $395, or you can save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $17.99. The training is going to start on February 18th and run Wednesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still keep up with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community and really get the value that way. So I think as you've heard today, John is really one of the preeminent voices and teachers out there. So you're really in expert hands and you will get a wealth of information that you can apply in your life and the lives of others. So again, it's all at quantumayurvedatraining.com, quantumayurvedatraining.com. I encourage you to give it a read, tune in, and if you get the sense that this is for you, then move forward right away. And you'll receive that special bonus, Dr. John's ebook, Colorado Cleanse, if you sign up by midnight tonight. So John, we're at the end of our hour. It's amazing how much you've packed in. So anything that's still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering doing this full Quantum Ayurveda training with you?
You know, when I was asked to do this 18-week course, I was like, oh my goodness, that's a long, long course. And as I kind of put pencil to paper and started really looking at the opportunity that I had to teach something so deep, I've never been able to put all these pieces of the puzzle together in one course. I've been teaching Ayurvedic colleges for decades and decades, but I've never been able to put it all together in one coherent course, linking, the field to the emotional psychology, to the breath, and to how that impacts the body and how to deliver, coherence into the physiology So I've just become super excited about this particular course. I can't wait to dive in and teach you guys how to really understand what Ayurveda was really about. It was not about just healing the body. It was about refining that human instrument and, beginning to have an experience of the truth. In Ayurveda, the real definition is Ayu means life, Veda means truth. It means the truth of your life, letting that out. And that, I feel like in this course, because we have the time, I have the opportunity to really, give that definition the time and the attention and the credit it deserves.
Really beautiful. It's really clear the sincerity and depth of your commitment and the vastness of your knowledge. So thank you for bringing that all together in one powerful format for this training and really synthesizing a lifetime of study and practice. So again, all of the details for John's training are at quantumayurvedatraining.com, and you'll receive that special bonus, Dr. John's ebook, Colorado Cleanse, if you sign up by midnight tonight. So thank you so much, all. Many blessings, and thank you, John.
Thank you, Stephen.